Hi, I'm Brandilyn Tebo, and I want to share with you a little bit about my experience growing up as a young woman who is considered beautiful. But first, I want to acknowledge something. I want to acknowledge that I am a white, heterosexual woman whose appearance meets certain standards that society rewards. And I know that I've been rewarded for this throughout my life, and that it's given me privileges. I invite you to listen beyond that, to hear me share about an experience that's not often talked about. I was 14 when people started telling me that I should model. At first, I was psyched. I was like, me? Really? That's awesome. But then it started happening pretty much every time I would go out in public, and I began to realize that people were not okay with me not being interested in modeling. So I started to justify it. Well, I said, I want to be a journalist or a psychologist. I want to help people. And they reassured me that I would succeed at modeling, as if the only reason that anyone would choose to not pursue a career in beauty is because of insecurity. They told me that my beauty was my smartest investment, and that if I could get recognition for my beauty first, then I would be able to make a difference in the world. In high school, I made the competitive debate team, and I was so proud. And on our first practice, I overheard our coach, who had not seen me try out, ask how the heck Barbie made the team. Later that year in competition, a judge marked me off points and said that it was because my appearance was distracting. That same year, I got an award for best math student, and my friends told me that it was because the teacher had a crush on me. It seemed like the only thing that I could take credit for was being pretty, so my hard work didn't really matter. Meanwhile, in high school, one of my best friends stopped talking to me because her boyfriend hit on me, and she was mad at me for that. Another friend said that she didn't want to go out places with me because it made her feel insecure. I started to assume that women wouldn't like me, and so I began finding things to apologize for and finding ways to put myself down. I had the opposite problem with men. I was barely 15 when 30-year-old guys were asking for my number. I was told not to trust men, even the ones who say that they're your friends, because they really only want one thing. So I felt guilty around women, and I felt afraid of men. I felt isolated, so I turned even more to external validation. I was 17 when I signed to my first modeling agency, and in my very first meeting with them, they told me that the more I watched what I ate, the more defined my bone structure will be, and the more jobs I'll book. At one of my first shoots, the photographer tried to convince me to shoot topless. Another man in the industry said that if I slept with him, he could get me onto Vogue. I didn't do either of these things, and they told me that I was never going to make it as a model. At 17, I was diagnosed with anorexia. My agency told me that I looked great. A family friend at dinner jokingly asked me if my agency paid me to not eat at dinner, because that was clearly part of the job. Well, if not eating was part of the job, then I worked non-stop to deny my hunger signals. During this time, I was paid to go to parties where all of the men were successful and all of the women were beautiful. At one of these parties, there were naked women spray painted in gold with lampshades over their heads who were paid to be there. They weren't allowed to talk. And I understood then that beauty is treated like public property. It gets auctioned. It goes to the highest bidder. And I realized that I had started to relate to myself as a commodity, something to consume, subject to the uncaring laws of supply and demand. I was afraid that if I was not thin and beautiful, that I would be worth less. I became dependent on external validation in order to feel okay. I started to equate myself with my exterior. My appearance was no longer this small part of myself. It was who I was. So if I didn't book a modeling job, it's not like I failed at that job. It was that I was a failure because I was my appearance and that failed. I beat myself up striving for physical perfection because it felt like all I had. When I realized that this was happening, I eventually quit modeling. And this, along with a lot of meditation and coaching and therapy and pursuing my passions, helped me to recover. I soon started to speak publicly about my eating disorder and sharing my story. People told me that I didn't have a right to speak about this issue because I was privileged, and therefore it was easy for me. Of course, I was at peace. But beauty never made the hard things any less hard. Being told that I was beautiful wasn't liberating. It was confining and stifling and isolating. It was confusing not to be able to tell the difference between my inner and my outer worth. Beauty never gave me peace. Eventually, I realized that who I was not beautiful. You cannot reduce me to something. I was not obligated to be beautiful for anyone, nor is beautiful the best thing that I can be. I realized that beauty has nothing to do with peace. Peace earned through external means is vanity. And when I realized that there is no true correlation between beauty and happiness or fulfillment or peace, I gave myself permission to not have to be beautiful and to get to just be me.